And the strike resulted in at least 57 civilians being killed. And I truly don't even know, why are we bombing Yemen? I know that Yemen has been suffering these kind of attacks for years, but I rarely hear American news sources talking about it, to the point where even in the group chat, Pete Hegseth said, no one knows who the Houthis are. And as much as I hate co-signing anything Hegseth says, I think he's largely right that most of us are underinformed on the situation. So I'll ask you, do you know anything what's going on in Yemen?
Yeah, so I've kept in, well, I was going to say kept in touch, which sounds insane. So we've been bombing Yemen for so long. I remember for a long time there was a civil war going on there where Saudi Arabia got involved. And because Saudi Arabia got involved, that meant America had to get involved. Yemen is, of course, one of the first places where we really broke a lot of international rules because it's where Obama airstruck a U.S. citizen without any due process. So if you're reading the news, just understand that things are not unprecedented, they're just further down a very slippery slope, and that's what we should be really afraid of. But in any case, the Houthis sort of came into prominence during the first Trump administration, when he started bombing them quite indiscriminately. And it's got to the place where it was so bad that Bernie Sanders, I don't know if you guys remember him, actually proposed a bill where he was trying to prohibit the U.S. from military action in Yemen. And it actually managed to pass in a bipartisan way in both the, I don't know why I blanked on that word, but it really did. It managed to, that's how rare it is today. It managed to pass in the Senate and the House, but it was unfortunately then vetoed by Trump.
And is this something that America should be involved in? Again, I just don't know any of the details on why we're involved. I know you said that Saudi Arabia got involved and therefore America had to get involved. I assume that's just because...
I want to be very, very clear that when I say that America has to be involved, that is as tongue-in-cheek as possible.
For sure. And, I'm not ascribing that to you. You're saying ultimately it's not America has to be involved. It's therefore America became involved. I understand that. But does America actually need to be involved in this? I suspect it's not an issue where we would all hear it and agree America has to be involved in it. It seems like it's a political issue in itself of whether we're involved, and which is why it's so frustrating that we can't talk about that, because we've been talking about how clownish these buffoons are. But is it something we should be involved in I guess in your opinion?
Absolutely not. It's basically a thing where first Saudi Arabia decided to get involved in their civil war, and because Saudi Arabia is such a close ally to the United States, they dragged us into some of the first strikes upon Yemen. Even before that, you could argue that the war on terror basically meant that the entire Middle East was on the watch list for a while. More recently, essentially the Houthis were destroying shipping routes that required just ships to get through that part of the world, and a lot of these things were supplies going to Israel. So the Houthis were, I'm not sure how intentionally, I'm sure somewhat intentionally, but somewhat intentionally became some of the strongest allies to the Palestinians because they were actually harming Israeli aims in a real and tangible way. So the United States felt that they had to back up their ally in that sense. All of this feels like the kind of thing I would never get involved for any of this. But for the past 20 years, I've been proven wrong, I guess.
And I guess, so since I truly just don't know, are the Houthis the governmental power? Are they in the position of power as running the country of Yemen? Or are they just a body that exists within Yemen that is causing this trouble for shipping?
From what I understand, they're a paramilitary rebel group. So they are not directly attached to the Yemenis government, which makes it, I guess, much harder for them to be dealt with on the international stage. The law of armed conflict tends to sort of look the other way when there is a third-party group, both in terms of upholding their obligations in war and also their victims.
And are they doing it specifically to harm Israel, or what is their reason for?
Yeah, more or less. I mean, so essentially it's a proxy war where the Houthis are funded by a lot of groups in Iran that are, I think, loosely connected to the Iranian government, but you can argue that the loosely thing is maybe just a, culpable liability type thing, pretext. Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So what you're actually seeing is Saudi Arabia versus Iran inside Yemen. And as Iran and Israel have beef, Iran would not dare to normally directly attack Israel, but they are willing to let the Houthis do it on their behalf. All of that is to be said that there was a ceasefire for a long time that Israel had with the Houthis that was broken recently with Israel's most recent strikes over the Palestinians. And so the Houthis started responding, I believe, in March. And that's when the U.S. decided to get involved and strike back. But essentially, attacking the Houthis is one of the most American things you can do if you're in power, because both sides, the Democrats and the Republicans, have done it. But it's also pretty consistently just a graveyard for our war crimes.